Well, hello there, gaseous flufferitos. Lurks here, and today I'm going to talk about how I failed miserably at becoming a furry artist. Now you may remember, about 4 months ago, I presented myself with a challenge. I said, I am going to draw every day for 1 year and see what happens. Could I progress from my current drawing ability, which is about that of a 3 to 5 year old, to something halfway decent and respectable in a year, or would I just fail? Well, guess what? 4 months in, and I'm going to call it a failure already. And here's what happened. I did some research, of course. I wanted to start out correctly. So the way to start out, I discovered, was to start with the absolute fundamentals. Since I have no skill base already, I needed to start at the bottom. I found a respected art teacher who does YouTube videos, and he had a video about kind of mastering the fundamentals of artwork in 30 days. So I started following this. And it consisted of some pretty simple stuff, basically drawing simple geometric shapes, then bisecting them, then cutting them into quadrants, then making them three-dimensional. And eventually you would start connecting these shapes together to make general anatomical shapes like hands and fingers and stuff. Right from the beginning, I noticed something was off. I could not draw simple geometric shapes. I mean, it was just bad. Something like a circle or a box or a triangle. The lines were just wavy and uneven and just absolutely bad looking. I literally cannot even draw a straight line. Even with assistive technology from the drawing software that I was using, I still could not draw anything resembling a smooth line. Now, I tried and tried and tried early on. I made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these attempts to draw just simple shapes, and there was no improvement. I spent probably 3 weeks working on it, and I got frustrated. Took a lot of my motivation away because I just wasn't making any progress. The other issue I ran into was I realized that after coming home from an 8-hour workday or spending hours making one of these videos, I kind of just wanted to sit down and relax. I didn't really want to do something that took a whole lot of concentration and mental effort. So pretty soon I was no longer drawing every day. And I'd try again, and I'd fail again, and eventually it got to the point where I had just stopped. And I've now realized that I think I failed the challenge. So why give up? Nobody likes to admit that they suck so bad at something that it's not worth them continuing, but I think I'm gonna have to admit that right now. I just don't have any inherent ability to do artwork. Some people are gifted with that, and their learning curve is so much quicker than a normal person. They can pick up on it super fast because their brain is just wired that way. I think I'm actually the opposite. I'm not even starting at the normal 0 point of somebody trying to learn artistic skills. I'm actually starting below that. I think there's some type of physiological or neurological thing going on, a slight deficit that I have that actually prevents me from being able to get the hand-eye coordination of drawing correctly. The other thing it came down to is time spent. I had to sit down and think, how long would it take me if I do indeed even have the ability to become a decent artist? How many hours? How many hundreds of hours? How many thousands of hours would it take for me to get there? Realistically, probably 2 to 3 to 4,000 hours just to get decent, and that's a long time when you're starting as an adult. If I calculate what my time is worth based on what I get paid per hour at work, which really isn't that much, but it still comes out to a huge number when you multiply it by 3 or 4,000. It actually comes out to enough to where I could just buy a $200 to $300 commission from an artist once a month for like the next 30 years if I calculate the value of my time that way. And there's a chance after all that effort that I just never would be good enough to where I could even draw simple stuff for myself or Patreon rewards or something like that. It might be a huge investment of time that ends up in a failure, and maybe it's best to just cut the losses and call it a failure early on. An example I looked at was my older sister. She had expressed some interest in starting to do artwork about 3 or 4 years ago, and I gave her my Wacom tablet. That's right, yeah, I've given up on art before. She had some level of intrinsic artistic talent, and within weeks was drawing pretty well. She pretty much just skipped the whole beginner stage and started at kind of low intermediate. She's been drawing every day for about 3.5 years now. And the funny thing is, although she had that inherent ability that helped her kind of jump up the learning curve really quickly, it's now plateaued out. She's better than she was when she started after 3.5 years of practice, that's for sure, but she's not that much better. Her artwork is still at the intermediate level, it's just a little bit better than what it was. And that's after 3.5 years versus the 1 year I was giving myself, and that's somebody who actually had some natural ability to draw. It might not have been the greatest sign in the world when most of my artist friends didn't really have much to say in terms of encouragement or suggestions when I started this process. One of them actually did give me some good suggestions, but most of them were kind of silent. And that's not because they were being rude, I think it's actually because they were being polite. They knew that my chances of success starting this as an adult with no natural ability were pretty low and just kind of kept quiet, I think. Let's just think about the artists that we all know and love in the furry fandom. They're probably at least in their 20s, if not in their 30s and 40s, or even 50s. They've been doing this for decades, and they probably started when they were a child. That's another important thing to remember. It's another challenge that adults have when they're starting to learn a skill from scratch. Children are wired to learn. That's how their brain works. It's easier for them to pick up skills and languages and stuff like that than an adult. So as much as I hate to admit it, I suck at art and I'm probably not going to be able to learn how to do it. It's disappointing, sure. But I guess the good thing is I can continue to support my favorite furry artists, because I certainly will not be doing any art myself. Now, I don't know, I can give it one last chance. Does anybody out there have, any good suggestions? Do you think my artistic skills could be salvaged? Do you think there's a reason why I can't even draw straight lines? Am I doing something wrong? Am I approaching the whole thing wrong? Let me know in the comments if you got something to say, and maybe I'll give it another try for a couple months, but it's become awfully frustrating and I'm like this close from giving up. And as always, a big, super fuzzy shout out to our incredible patrons. You help keep this channel going and growing. Every dime that we get from Patreon goes directly into improving our content and into rewards to give back to our patrons. If you might like to become a patron, check the link in the description. We'll be back soon with more Fuzzalicious content. Later this month, we're going to be going to Anthrocon for the first time ever. And of course, we'll have a video on that. Until then, may your artistic endeavors end better than mine. Stay safe and stay fluffy.